What is going on, Bucs fans? Evan Wanish here, back at you with yet another position group preview for the Buccaneers. This time, we're wrapping up the defensive side of the football with the safety position. Now, the safety position, of course, has changed a lot over the last few seasons. It had obviously Jordan Whitehead on the Super Bowl team. Jordan Whitehead departed after a few years for the Jets in free agency. The Bucs brought in guys like Neal, Logan Ryan. Neither one of those guys are back. So we will take a look at the safety room. The Buccaneers are actually, I didn't even realize just how inexperienced the safety room is, besides Antoine Winfield Jr., of course. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Of course, as I mentioned, you have Antoine Winfield Jr., which we all know what he brings to the table. Todd Bowles had even said earlier in the offseason that they wanted him to be more of a traditional safety again and less of that slot corner type. So I think you could see Winfield in more of a playmaking role in this defense. But other than that is Christian Izien, Kayvon Merriweather, Ryan Neal, who was the free agent signing from Seattle this past offseason, Nolan Turner, who played a little bit last season, and Kedrick Whitehead, in addition to Antoine Winfield Jr. So reading the names there, a lot of inexperience. You have a lot of inexperience. Guys like Merriweather, Whitehead are undrafted free agents from this past season. Izien as well. Nolan Turner was an undrafted free agent a few years ago. It was on the team, has some experience, but not a ton. And honestly, Antoine Winfield Jr. is even like, sure, he's experienced, but this is going into year 4. So a guy like him is one of the most experienced players on this in the safety room. Of course, you got Ryan Neal as well. So I want to focus on those two players, though, Antoine Winfield Jr. and Ryan Neal, because I honestly think if you're looking at it, those probably most likely are your two starting safeties when week 1 rolls around. In Antoine Winfield's case, I think he's a terrific football player. Obviously, we all know how good he is, what he brings to the table as a safety, as a leader of the defense now. I mean, he's been in his defense for quite a while. He's a versatile player, of course, as evidence that he could play slot corner if they absolutely need him to. I do agree with Todd Bowles, though, that the best spot for him is probably as a pure safety. I think you could see him get more interceptions that way, get more takeaways, be more active in coverage that way. I just think that's what's best served for him. But then also Ryan Neal. And Ryan Neal was a guy who I believe is 27 years old, was in Seattle for a little while, and really flashed in his time in Seattle. Was kind of an underrated player for that Seattle defense, and was a restricted free agent this offseason. Was scheduled to be a restricted free agent. I believe Seattle put a tender on him, rescinded the tender. So then that made him an unrestricted free agent where the Buccaneers picked him up. So if they would have stayed as a restricted free agent and the Buccaneers would have signed him, there would have had to have been some compensation going to Seattle in terms of a draft pick or something. But nonetheless, Ryan Neal was an unrestricted free agent, got signed by Tampa Bay. And I know a lot of people are excited about him, and I am as well. I'm curious to see what he can do with a bigger role in a defense because, like I said, he was good with Seattle, but he was never a full-time starter for them consistently. There were spots where he definitely did start, but every single game, playing every single snap, that wasn't his game. But I will say he had a good year in Seattle last year, and I do think those two, Antoine Winfield Jr. and Ryan Neal, are pretty important to the Buccaneers secondary having success because as we looked, you got Nolan Turner, Kedrick Whitehead, Kayvon Merriweather, and Christian Izien. Those guys behind them are not that experienced. So if Ryan Neal or Antoine Winfield Jr. goes down with an injury or something like that, has to miss any sort of time, the Buccaneers could be in trouble here because there's not a lot of experience depth there. Now, I mean, this is being recorded before training camp, before the preseason. Some of these guys that I'm mentioning here could play well, and could boost the confidence of that room for sure. Whereas, if Antoine Winfield goes down with an injury, you can rely on whoever to step up in his absence for a game or two. Obviously, It's a bit different if he's missing the whole season. That's harder to mask, I guess you could say, when it's an entire season, whether instead of being 2 or 3 games. But I am curious to see how those undrafted free agents are going to play in camp, because there's a lot of them in this safety room, and really on the team regardless. But I was surprised when looking at the roster, just how little experience the guys behind Antoine Winfield Jr. and Ryan Neal have, especially compared to what the Bucs had. Like I said, in past seasons when they had guys like Logan Ryan, a good veteran, who he is still a free agent. It wouldn't shock me if the Buccaneers maybe look to bring him back, depending on how training camp goes. As a veteran presence, that wouldn't shock me at all. Keanu Neal signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers earlier this offseason, so that's not an option. But I do think there is still potential for them to add a veteran. Let me know if you think they should add a veteran to this room. Probably not a starter level. I mean, unless you think they should add a starting level veteran. But I think they could use a guy in that room that has been there and done that before. And just in case of an injury or something happens, I think it would be wise to sort of have that insurance there. But let me know what you guys think about the safety room. Do you think Anton Winfield is going to take yet another jump? I think he could be in for a Pro Bowl season in 2023. Let me know what you think of Ryan Neal. Do you think he makes a jump, sort of like Shaq Barrett did when he left Denver to come to Tampa Bay? Do you think Ryan Neal makes a similar jump? Maybe not as productive, maybe, because I mean 19 and a half sacks is a lot. But do you think Ryan Neal plays well to potentially earn more money and a bigger contract down the line with the Buccaneers? Let me know what you think of some of these undrafted free agents that are behind those guys as well. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and talk soon.